access closed caption on the bottom of your screen. And if the button does not appear, select the More option, and you should find your closed caption option there. The first part of this series, Unveiling the How, Real People, Real Stories, and it is hosted by Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle and League of Women Voters, Seattle, King County. We begin this evening with our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we were on the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish and Coastal Salish people, past and present. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish and Coastal Salish tribes. Tonight is the first event in a 4-part series of panels called Homelessness, How Did We Get Here? The series will explore homelessness in depth with the goal of broadening public awareness and understanding of this complex issue. Attendees will hear from policy experts, researchers, lawmakers, and people with lived experience of homelessness. We will cover risk factors for homelessness, challenge biases and stereotypes around the issue, evaluate local efforts to reduce homelessness, and explore policy solutions from other areas. Tonight's focus is on unveiling the how, real people, real stories. My name is Barbara Tangchio, and I am on the board of the League of Women Voters, Seattle, King County. Our mission is to empower voters and defend democracy. The League is best known for voter services, which includes registering voters, holding candidate forums, and encouraging people to vote. We are also active in civic engagement and education in the schools, advocacy, and education forums like this one. The League is nonpartisan. We do not endorse candidates or parties. We do advocate and lobby for legislation that aligns with our values and our mission. We welcome all men and women from the age of 16 to join us. If being nonpartisan and our mission of empowering voters and defending democracy speaks to you, please join us by visiting our website, lwvskc.org, or make a donation at lwvskc.org. Thank you. Tonight's moderator, Felicia Hudson, started her work in law and advocacy at Highline College, where she received her paralegal degree and served as the chair of the Student Legislative Action Committee, sat on the student task force, and interned at a Federal Way criminal defense firm and at the Housing Justice Project. She formerly worked as the program coordinator for the Federal Way Black Collective and facilitated their Facebook show, Thursday Thoughts, worked with organizations such as the ACLU, NAACP, and the Renton Regional Community Foundation to advocate for equality, inclusion, and justice for the BIPOC communities, and moderated forums for the Washington Innocence Project and the League of Women Voters, Seattle, King County. She has since started a small business, ACF Rise and Thrive LLC, where she provides consulting services for small, minority-owned businesses and nonprofits through capacity building, marketing, and advertising. Please welcome Felicia Hudson.
Thank you so much for having me. And I also want to say thank you to the Urban League for being our co-sponsor. Working together and collaboratively is so important, and supporting one another is amazing. So thank you so much. And I just want to kind of get into it. Let's get into our guests here. So Zaza, would you like to go first?
Hi, my name is Jaja Floyd. I use the she suite for my pronouns, meaning she, her, and hers. I am a person who has lived experience of homelessness. And I've been housed now for 4 years. So my homelessness was just recently. I went from vehicle homelessness into a camp and then eventually into a tiny house. And you'll learn more about me later on. Thank you. And thank you for allowing me to be on your panel.
Thank you so much. Is there anything that you want to mention maybe about the work that you do or let the people know?
Certainly. So I work as the Director of Community Partnership and Base Building for the Lived Experience Coalition. We're a group of people who are homeless or formerly homeless. We advocate and educate for homeless folks. We do not say homeless. I prefer to use the word unsheltered neighbors because I was once there. So as far as I'm concerned, when I see someone living without shelter, then they are my cousin. They could be my brother, mama, my auntie, my grandmama, my child. They are my neighbors. They are me. And when I see them, I see me. And my whole passion is to go out there. And when I work building community partnership, but I also do on the ground. I like to meet people right where they're at, one-on-one conversations, building relationships, finding out what their needs are. People have stereotypes about people living unsheltered. People come from all walks of life. I met an 81-year-old woman who was very wealthy, but her son died and he took care of everything for her. And then she ended up homeless. You know what I'm saying? And so she said her grieving led her into her homelessness. So I got all kinds of stories like that of different folks I encounter. A lot of people stereotype and they talk about drugs and alcohol. It's not just that. People come from all walks of life.
I want to know so much more about this. I'm super excited. We're about to just jump right onto it.
That's all right. That's fine. Thank you.
We have to talk to the rest of the panel, but thank you so much. Thank you. We're going to move right on now to Devontae Parson. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my bad. I had it. Can you guys hear me? I got my AirPods trying to do it on my phone right now. Okay, good. Sorry. How you guys doing? Devontae Parson. I use he, him pronouns. I have lived experience in homelessness when I was a youth and a young adult. You know, coming from the streets, heavy in the gang culture. My grandma went to prison when I was 14, leaving me in the streets. I was sleeping on buses at one point, in and out of different people's houses, depending on who I knew at times. Did a park a couple of times, was going to juvenile and stuff to have a residence or a place to go. Out, became a young adult, being in and out, not able to get different housing, not much support, was doing the same thing. And, after the stint, which you'll learn more of my story later on, I eventually got myself together. Right now, I'm the executive director of ProSite Potential, where we mentor youth and young adults to come from all walks of life, primarily Black and brown young people who are street or gang involved or criminal justice impacted, connected with mentors and resources and help them get from where they are to where they need to get to. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And we'll move on to Nature. Nature, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay, awesome, awesome. My name is Nature Carter, and I don't use pronouns because when I show up to spaces, I'm Black, so that says enough, right? I am born and raised in the Seattle Historical Central District projects of the Yesler Terrace. So, yeah, that says a whole lot, right? It says a whole lot. I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited to be here. When I think about this topic, there's a whole lot, that I can share about, that there's so much lived experience on this screen. One of the things that I can say is that I survived the odds and I'm serving on some of the same streets in a different capacity. Like I said, I grew up in the Yester Terrace projects, and too many people, not too many people that look like me were able to escape or survive. What I would say is the economical challenges with poverty and the deep-rooted generational, unstably housed individuals like myself, to becoming where I'm at today. I'm not gonna talk about like how much money I have or anything, but with the success of being able to continue to provide, a way out for those who otherwise wouldn't have access to equity or opportunity. So I'm currently a founder of a nonprofit organization called Beyond Measures. We are an Afrocentric behavioral health program located in Kent, Washington. I'm currently a full-time employee at the YWCA, Seattle King County, as a program manager, overseeing one of our largest trafficking programs in the state of Washington. So I'm excited to be here.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And Dr. Wes Browning, would you like to introduce yourself? Oh, are you speaking right now? We're not able to hear you. It looks like you might still be on mute.
How about that? Can you hear
There
me
we
now?
go. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
I'm closely involved with Real Change News. I've been involved with Real Change News since before they started. They started in 1994, and I was already contacted by the founder 6 months earlier. I've been homeless for 4 times in about 4 years in my adult life. And the thing is the most defining characteristic of my life is that I was a childhood survivor of severe childhood abuse, and nevertheless, of the 4 times that I was homeless, 3 of the 4 times that I was homeless were not really because of the PTSD that you would think would have caused the homelessness. No, it was real estate decisions. It was people deciding that the people who live in a house shouldn't be living there anymore because the housing owner decided that they wanted to change the rents, and they couldn't do it because there were restraints, there were legal restraints on what they could do because there was laws in place that prevented them from throwing people out. So I got thrown out because they just found a loophole in the law.
Okay, this is just an introduction.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
My wife is
Thank
here telling me to just calm down.
We appreciate the information. Thank you so much.
Times it was all about real estate developers.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Browning. Excuse me. Up next, we have Cindy Sandingo Chang. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. It's a blessing and an honor to be here with the panel members, but also just being able to speak about my experience. So thank you for that opportunity. My name is Cindy Sandino Chang. I am an advocate, an entrepreneur, and a mother. I experienced homelessness due to domestic violence and have since, I'm a strong advocate for those who experience violence and also for those who are experiencing homelessness. I'm the co-founder for Total Care Services, and our mission is to strengthen and uplift survivors by providing advocacy services. We also provide other services such as job prepping, car detailing, moving assistance, and auto repair services. I am also a City of Seattle employee. I work with Human Services Department in partnership with the Seattle Police Department, and I'm a crime victim advocate with the city. And just very grateful to be here. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Cindy. And let's see, I think, is this all of our panelists at this point have introduced themselves? All right, so now we're going to move on to the questions portion. I will go ahead and start with what words or terms do you prefer that people use when discussing homelessness? I'm going to start with nature. Would you like to answer that? Or Zaza, would you like to answer that?
Certainly. For me, I deal with folks living unsheltered, and they prefer not to be, the people I run into, which is a lot, prefer not to use the word homeless. They say they're not homeless, they're without a house, right? So we called unsheltered neighbors is the preferred term, not a customer. They're not a customer. They don't like that word. They don't like the client word unless they're going in being a client at a doctor's office or in some shape or form about an appointment. So I prefer the word unsheltered neighbor because it brings them in, right? And I want everyone to know that they matter and that they're a masterpiece because God makes no junk. And I want them to know that.
I love that. Thank you. Would anybody else like to chime in? The question is, what words or terms do you prefer that people use when discussing homelessness?
I don't mean to hog the mic, but I do want to say also that community. When you're talking about homelessness, talk about community. People move together as a unit. That's the family out there, right? So it's more of a community with unity and love happening right there. You know what I'm saying? It's not, homeless just seems like it's so shallow, like it it's it's empty, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And the people out there are
Yeah,
not empty. So that's what I just want to say.
right.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely see, where you're coming from, that it is a person, these are people. It's not just, an empty shell. It's not a figment of your imagination. These are actually people. So yeah, humanizing it, I think is so important. Because people are often, kind of demonizing people who are out and having a tough time, and really anybody could go through a tough time in life. So thank you for that. We're going to move on to the next question, which is, what resources did you need that weren't there that might have helped you avoid becoming homeless? Go ahead, Dr. West. So I'll repeat the question. What resource do you think did you need that weren't there that might have helped you avoid becoming homeless? So resources such as, maybe access to higher education or higher paying jobs, or, you know, sometimes renting apartments, right? It can be crazy as far as the rental requirements. A lot of places are requiring people to have higher credit scores and, make 3 times the rent, right? Who's making 3 times the rent nowadays? I mean, let's be honest, right? Most people aren't. They're working multiple jobs just to try to barely stay afloat. There are resources out there, but what resources from your lived experience do you feel would have helped you to avoid some certain situations?
I'll go ahead and unmute myself and answer that question. My apologies, I had to step away for a quick break. I've been on the computer all day. So I wanted to respond, and just to really, for me, as a young mother, first being able to go back and talk about, generational, economic disadvantages and poverty, right? And so I think for me, like looking at now with some of the conversations that I have with folks that I'm able to aid, is really the financial literacy. And financial literacy doesn't mean that you have to have money to understand the literacy piece to finances, but it's more so of understanding, the aspects of, when you do get money, how do you use it? How can you make it stretch rather than spending it on certain things that are unnecessary, right? And then understanding the determined, factors that comes along with, keeping afloat a household. How do you do that as a single mother living on a fixed income, right? And so again, I think, coming along with when we talk about the economic, disadvantages and the disparities, we're still talking about, housing, fair housing rights and different things like that. And then being able to look at, like, homelessness doesn't just happen just overnight. It happens when folks are out of reach to be able to access those services. And so the education, the informative piece, and the empowerment, especially for everyone, but really for single mothers, right? Those who are fleeing intimate danger and have to restart their lives over again, and then so on and so on. So, but I just kind of wanted to respond to that. One of the big factors right now that I believe that will increase the protective factors for families is having more education and empowerment around rights around housing, and then the financial literacy. And then, of course, affordable access to employment and education, like you had just shared about.
Absolutely.
I would like to add to that as well. As I said, I experienced homelessness due to domestic violence. I was working for the city. I've worked for the city for over 18 years now. So, and I was a supervisor. So on paper, I looked good. There was no reason for me to be homeless, right? If you're just looking on paper, but not seeing the behind the scenes stuff that was going on at home, the financial abuse, yes, I was able to take care of some bills, but sometimes I wasn't able to take care of that because of the abuse I was experiencing, right? Domestic violence doesn't just come in physical abuse, it comes in multiple ways of abuse. And for me, I think just the understanding would have been, because I was trying to, and as a mom, I was trying to provide for my kids. It was a situation where by the time I left, it felt like my life was in danger and I wasn't going to risk my kids' lives at all. And I talked to many landlords and people who just weren't understanding, and who were not trying to hear the fact that, okay, well, why does your credit look like this? Well, why is this, and it's like, well, I had to choose which bills to pay. And sometimes, I did, I was getting the money, but I wasn't really in control of that at the time. Because abuse I was experiencing. And then when you do say, and you become vulnerable enough and you say, I experienced domestic violence, then automatically they're like, oh, well, is this person going to come looking for you? And now they feel like they're in danger.
And there's discrimination that can happen. Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely, which then puts someone who is trying to get out of a situation back, it can kind of push them back in. I was very blessed when I finally did speak out about it. I had a community that embraced me and was able to support me, but I still had to find housing, and so that, that just the understanding, I think would have been a great factor as a resource.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I do want you to talk in a little bit. I want to come back to financial abuse and what exactly that is, because I think, there's a lot of, I've seen a lot of questions and like, how could that happen? Or what exactly is that? Right. So I'd love for you to break that down here in just a moment. So I'm going to return to that. But thank you so much, Cindy. Devontae, I see that you have your hand up.
Yeah, my bad. Excuse me. I gotta speak from two parts. I'll speak from the aspect of a youth, and I'll speak from the aspect of an adult, right? As a young person, I think it starts in the household. And I think there's that education, that financial literacy, but also that support, mental health services, and all these different roundabout resources, right? For me as a young person, what caused it was my grandmother going to prison, being taken to prison, and then me not having any family and no solid support out here, right? And not wanting to go into the system or go to the juvenile or go to any other thing, right? So I think that the things that happened with my grandmother and the family, it was stuff that should have been held in the household if we had access to the resources that were around. Now, the thing about Washington State is we have a lot of resources, but oftentimes there's not a bridge there for people to walk individuals who are growing up in poverty to those resources and educate them on those resources and navigate those resources for them or help them navigate the resources, right? And with me working with young people now, they fall into those traps because their family's not resourced or they don't know about the resources. And by the time that we're able to give them access to it, they've already fallen so deep in the hole that the young person's suffering for it. Now they're out on the streets. They don't have a house. The lights are out. All this other kind of stuff is happening, right? As an adult, one big thing that I'm experiencing, I'll speak from personal opinion, is people with criminal records. They make it extremely difficult for you to get into. Oh, sorry, forgive me. I'm forgetting a little fast. They make it extremely difficult for you to get into any kind of housing when you have a criminal record. And that keeps a lot of people homeless, right? And a lot of these individuals that I've seen will want to come and change their life. But the first thing is you're looking for a shelter. You're looking for somewhere you can stay at, right? But if you're not able to obtain any kind of success as far as getting housing over your own head, right, and that independent form of living, even if you can get a job, then you'll eventually slip back into your old ways because you have nowhere to go, right? Or you'll be forced to stay with someone, whether it's a man or a woman, that is not necessarily as healthy for you. You'll fall back into your ways, right? So I think that the housing, like fair housing, is extremely important. Partner with the financial education because that's extremely important. Because if you get the bag, but you don't know how to utilize, if you get the money, you don't know how to utilize the money properly, you won't be able to sustain the housing. But also, if you have a record, they don't let you get into the housing. That's messed up. Now, Seattle, they were able to take away the part where they look at the record. But what they do now is they pay attention to your credit score, like we were just talking about. But if you were doing time, or say you didn't even do time, but you were never taught about building credit, that already puts you at a disadvantage. So now you're homeless because of that too. So I think those things are something to watch out, like help wraparound resources for youth and their families, but also adults, especially people who've been incarcerated at some point. They need the resource for financial education and also fair housing.
Thank you so much. Let's see. Is there anybody else? Dr. West, I think that I saw your hand was up.
Yeah, for me, I couldn't have ever gotten out of homelessness. I'm pretty sure the last time, if it wasn't for the fact that I developed a relationship with Downtown Emergency Service Center and through them, I ended up in subsidized housing, which was essentially run by Seattle Housing Authority. I just don't know how I would have got out of it. So, if I had had that opportunity earlier, I think I wouldn't have been so bad off. But that was a life-changing situation, and that was about 26 years ago. I got out of homelessness because of DESC and subsidized housing through SHA, and I'm now in a regular SHA building, and that's the big deal for me. That's what made it possible for me to stop being homeless.
Thank you. Thank you for that information. Let's see. Shasha, did you have your hand up? I don't want to skip over anybody. I want
I
all the
did.
info.
Can you repeat the question, please, Felicia?
Yes, ma'am. The question was, let's see, what resources did you need that weren't there that might have helped you avoid becoming homeless, or maybe just have avoid certain situations?
First of all, I can speak from a couple my entire life, but basically, I want to start out with racism is a resource that prevented me from being housed. Redlining prevented me from being places that I needed to be. And when you redline, that limits your ability to acquire housing. And if all the housing is taken up, right? If it's all taken up, then where are you? I had 2 full-time jobs when my children were young. My husband was in prison, and I had $1,800 in my pocket, and I couldn't find a house. I couldn't find a home because my husband had a beef with some landlord who had blacklisted him, which blacklisted me. So me and my children are sleeping in cars, and I'm making it to the friends and neighbors or whoever, the family, in order to get them showered, shampooed, and shined to get to school. Resources need to be equitable across the board, and they are not. People who look like me have a hard time. We talk about credit scores. I never had a positive credit score. I'm 63 until just this year. Just this year. No matter how hard I tried, I could not get the credit that was needed to move forward in life. It's always 10 steps backwards. So I've lived unsheltered, wanting to do the right thing by the law, not understanding that the law was not written for me. It's systemic racism that's happening here. It's the system. It's colonization, and it's keeping us separate. There is the division among the people. If they keep the poor white folks thinking that the brown and black and indigenous folks is the reason why they are where they are, there's going to be that divide. Resources are going to be out because there's more white folks on welfare than there is black folks, poor white folks, you know what I'm saying? And brown folks and indigenous folks. What is that? It's the country we live in. It's a system that was built to oppress and keep us where we're at. There's no resources. So it's the lack of resources. That's what I got to say.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I agree, there are a lot of different barriers out there and in place, and things still need to progress as far as that goes. So moving on to the next question. What do you want people to know about being homeless or houseless? We'll Oh, go ahead.
Can I just say real quick that what I want to know right now, because I work in the homelessness, the unsheltered spectrum, right now it's going to be 31 degrees tonight. That's what I want people to know. I want them to know about severe weather. I want them to know when they see that person out there that the weather changes, that it doesn't stay the same. We live in Washington State. Rain can cause someone to go into hypothermia or to get sick. People who live unsheltered, health is far 10 worse than someone living in shelter. That's what I want you to know about homelessness, that it affects your health and that you're not actually living. You're too busy surviving. You got to watch your things. You got to know where they're at, right? I find more people who turn to drugs just to stay awake so they don't have to deal with being harmed. You know, I don't want to get graphic, but with being harmed, right? So they can stay safe. And you have to have safety, so you have to stay awake, right? To keep the things that you do acquire and that you do need. People say get a job, but where am I going to take a shower at? Who's going to let me in? I don't have no money to pay for it. That's what I want them to know about homelessness. It's hard. It's hard when you fall down into homelessness to pull yourself up by yourself. And that's why you'll see people living in clusters. They have communities. They have communities because they support each other. And so what I want you to know about homelessness is it could be you. That's what I want you to know. It could be you, you know? So that's what the reality is living in 2023. You know, prices going up. It costs $40 for just someone. You have to make $40 an hour to live in a 1-bedroom unit in Seattle. Praise God, I work for Eco Thrive Housing. I'm on the board. I'm the vice president, and we're looking at building a resilient village of eco cottages that is a sustainable village where people can have home ownership, people making 50% to 60% of the area median income. See, we want to make a difference. We want to make a change. So that's what I want you to know
Absolutely.
about homelessness, that everyone deserves to live. And let's look at the humanity, right?
Yes.
Before you use your biases. Check your biases. That's another thing I want you to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's see. Cindy, did you have your hand up?
No, was just going to say that homelessness can happen to anybody, right? Just my own lived experience. I was working for the city. I was a supervisor at the time. My job was to help others. And I was still going back to a shelter and having to take care of my kids and dealing with that. Like, it can happen to anybody. You know, working as a domestic violence advocate, I and also as a crime victim advocate, you know, with the city, I see it all the time. I hear the stories all the time. People are doing, you know, people are labeled as successful, right, in society, but you never know what event. It could be an event, multiple events. It could also be one-time event that all of a sudden now you're homeless. So just thinking about that, as you know, we see our fellow human beings in the streets or in cars, at the parks. You know, I again feel very blessed that I was able to go to a shelter. And I went to 2 shelters, and I saw the drastic differences between a shelter in Everett, where I had to, you know, it took me hours to get there, which meant it took me hours to get to work, versus when I then got into Seattle at the YMCA shelter. But just the differences in the way that those both domestic violence shelters were being, the funding for them. You know, one, the ladies were like, hey, whatever you want. Oh, what does your kid want? Oh yeah, we go shopping, you know, whatever you guys want, right? They gave us quilts. But then the Seattle one, they were like, well, you have to, we're providing the housing. They provided other resources, but they're like, whatever you want to eat, you got to bring. And just seeing the drastic differences in that was it opened up my eyes. And I mean, both of them were a blessing because I was able to then get my kids out of the situation we were in and the reason that we were homeless. But also just seeing how in Seattle versus Everett, and it's for the same services, right? It's for women with children, and just the drastic differences in the way that that funding is used, and why is this funding better versus funding in Seattle that is helping majority BIPOC community, so just those differences were very drastic for me. But just knowing that it can happen to anybody, I know lawyers who have experienced it. You never know, right? And homelessness comes in different shapes too. You can be living out of your car. You can be in a shelter. You can be literally out on the streets or in the park, even couch surfing. Like, that's a form of homelessness. And yes, we have friends and family that help, but it's still homelessness. And you still feel like, okay, I'm needing support. I'm needing resources. And as a mom, I felt like I wasn't doing good enough,
Absolutely. Thank you. So, moving on to the next question. Describe the factors that led to becoming homeless. Was there like a single sudden event, or was it a gradual process? Like what happened? Does anybody want to, I guess, get a little vulnerable here?
Yeah, one of the things too that I want to just say, kind of piggybacking on that goes into this next question, right, is systemic inequality, displacement, exclusion and segregation. That kind of sums it up, right? And so really being able to look at how what the disadvantages, still that plays out is still, racism, because it's built into our housing systems in order to ensure that all have fair access to opportunity to build wealth is not what we see that is playing out. And this is why now in the margins of being able to access equitable housing now is still not a fair, just process. Because there's no way anybody could, 3 times amount the rent or your credit score. Let me get a show of hands of whose credit score on this screen right now is at a 750, right? Due to the inflation and everything else. It doesn't mean that we don't have a meal to prepare, but what we're looking at is still centuries of, structural racism, in our housing systems that continue to contribute with the racial disparities, the financial well-being, especially between when we look at Black households and white households. We know that homelessness is not contagious. And yes, it can happen to anyone, but the disproportionality really, speaks volume for our Black folks. Historically, the differences are enriched that are still the current trends that continue to price Black people out of the areas in which they can thrive and to become, to have communities. And if you're looking at, we could take, more than 200 years, right? It could take more than 200 years for the average Black family to accumulate the same amount of wealth as white counterparts. But while home ownership and affordable housing is not in our reach. So really to, eliminate the entrenched, racial practices and inequality that within our policies and, all of those different things. But again, it doesn't matter who you are, what you look like, or where you come from. Like we're all kind of, on an equal, playing field. But the disadvantages for our Black and brown folks are still going to continue to always be different is because when we talk about the representation, is that it still is a racial disparity.
I have so much that I could say on that one. I think that would be a whole nother conversation though. I mean, absolutely, I could not agree more. And I mean, I personally have seen these disparities within my own family. So absolutely. So we have a question that came in. Will lifting single family zoning really repair the harm of racial exclusion? Did you want to kind of speak to that nature or?
No, I'll let somebody else share. I think I shared a mouthful that I hope that has resonated with folks, but I'm sure we have some other experts and folks with lived experience on here as well that can speak to that. Maybe Zaza.
Absolutely. Or Devontae or Cindy or Dr. West, anybody want to go ahead and jump in
I'm gonna
there?
let Dr. West, it looks like Dr. West might be trying to say something. I'm gonna go behind him if he wanted to speak. Thank you, sir.
Okay, I'll tell you what I think about single family housing. I think it's wonderful for Seattle that it has all that single family housing because it makes it so beautiful. And that's what I fell in love with when I first set eyes on it. Is wonderful. All the single family housing is all very different, varied housing. You look from one house to the next, and you can hardly tell that there's the same architect. But no, that's not a good thing. It's not a good thing to have single family housing. Single family housing is racist. It's inherently racist. That's the reason why they had single family housing in the first place. It's not a good idea, and I'm against it. I just think that there needs to be a way for people to live however they need to live. People need to live in different circumstances. We used to have extended families. What happened to extended families? Well, single family housing was one of the reasons why we don't have extended families anymore. There was a time when you could have an extended family throughout a neighborhood. There would be people living here and there, grandmothers, grandfathers in different houses. But that was broken up. That was broken up by all kinds of crazy conditions. The different corporations got into it, and they started making people move across country to get into to continue their employment. They couldn't continue their employment unless they moved across country, or they had to switch corporations altogether. It's just, I don't know. I think that everything is working against people living in community, living within community. People have to have community, and community is being torn apart constantly by all the forces, the economic forces and corporate forces and governmental forces. Community is what matters. We have to preserve that.
And I just want to say, Felicia, that the removal of the single family housing zoning, will that prevent racism? I think not. racism is embedded in this country. It's a systemic thing. And that is to answer that question. However, though, removing the single family zoning would afford people to have more housing. Well, will it be affordable though? See, because when you remove that zoning, then you can put multiple units there. But will those units be affordable? And is that going to help us with the homelessness situation? So, you know what I'm saying? It leaves it open.
Absolutely.
Right.
And oh, let's see. Devontae, were you wanting to chime in on that?
No, I'm just soaking up some game right now.
All right. So kind of going back, because we touched on it a little bit, but speaking about financial literacy, and K through 12, what do you guys think that should be taught in K through 12? Do you think that's what other things do you think are missing as far as education for community? Cindy?
I do think that teaching financial literacy is very important, especially to our young children, right? And especially when we know that there are, discriminations and embedded racism, like we spoke a little bit about this before, like just redlining, um, gentrification, I don't remember which of the panel members is like, hey, I'm from the Central District. And that, and from the Terrace. And that speaks volumes because we know Seattle, so many of our communities have been pushed out. And just learning about that, but also, credit scores. So many times, we have working with young people and they're like, oh, I can get a credit score. I can get a credit card. And I'm like, yeah, they're going to send those to you. But what does that mean? How much should you spend? Should you get that? Do you even have a savings account first? Do you have a bank account? And just learning those steps, but also like, what does getting that credit card mean when you are then also ready to um, go and get a home, or when you're trying to get your first apartment. And I feel like it needs to go hand in hand. And I think it should definitely be something that starts in grade school, definitely by middle school. And, I remember home ec and I'm like, home ec is great, yes, but also sign me up for the financial literacy class, and talking to our young people about entrepreneurship and what does the side hustle that so many of our young people have talent and they have so many gifts to give, and how can we help mold that in a positive way so that they are learning how to either be able to do something that they're following their passion for and helping their community and also getting paid for it because their time is valuable, or they're not having to work the 9 to 5 and they can make their own hours. You know what I mean? So just all of that kind of education, I think definitely needs to be put into our young children, specifically our BIPOC community, and young adults.
Absolutely. Devontae, you have your hand up?
Yes, definitely. I'm a strong proponent for financial literacy. I believe that it should be taught from start. You know what I mean? Like even kindergarten, like maybe even if it's just starting out with like little fake dollars. But I definitely feel like it should be sectioned out, like to where you won't go into a first grade class and teach about building wealth and investing, right? You would probably say that for high school or even middle school, like you were saying, but you would section it out and do it to where it's practical with them and their segment of life at that point, and then keep them going throughout school. Because like we said, it's like it doesn't matter if I do say I'm able to get a job, but I don't know what to do with the money when I get the job, right? It doesn't matter because you're just gonna lose the money. It's the hole in the bag, right? But also coupled with financial literacy, I feel like basic life skills need to be taught. You know what I mean? Emotional regulation, right? And I'm speaking to when I speak, I want you guys to understand that a lot of the young people in the families I work with are low income, they're in poverty, and oftentimes they're criminally impacted and or street impacted. But it's because what came from not understanding how to regulate emotion and not having the financial literacy skills. The parents often not having financial literacy skills to save, to invest, to build, to own, et cetera, right? So I definitely feel like financial literacy skills should be something, a strong component in the school system, in the educational system in general, and also believe that basic life skills, how to navigate the world, how to navigate life, how to navigate educational systems, how to navigate. They were talking about racial systems. How do we navigate this, right? Because all this stuff is happening. Don't get me wrong, and it's definitely a systemic approach to hold people down. We're behind 400 years. We're trying to catch up, right? However, since we know that we're in this system, how do you navigate this system? How do I maneuver throughout this, right? Because everything says everything should be against me. You know what I mean? From the beginning, everything should have been against me. I got multiple robberies on record, multiple attempted murder. I got all kind of stuff. Everything should have been against me, but I navigated the system. I am one of the ones almost 800 credit score. You know what I mean? Potentially about to be a homeowner real soon. Saved a lot of, started a business, owned a couple different businesses, right? But that's only because I learned how to navigate the system through educating myself and getting with the people that didn't look like me, but also look like me, to help me navigate that as a Black man. So that kind of stuff need to be taught. So navigation, how to navigate in the system, basic in the system that we're oppressed in, basic life skills and financial literacy should be all components in our educational system and in our community from when they are not just in school.
So I'm gonna kind of piggyback off of that and ask what resources like helped you the most? What helped you get over that? You mentioned, you Devonta, you said you learned, right? You studied or what have you, but did you study books? Did you have a specific group or person that you went to? I know it's been mentioned kind of before, but what was it that helped you move forward? What resource or person or situation?
Honestly, it started with books. When I was incarcerated at the time, and it began with individuals who were first speaking to me because just shining a little light on it. I was representing myself in court against a life sentence, and as I started getting better and studying law while I was in there, older individuals were coming up to me and saying, like, "Young man, you're smart," which should have been something that when I was outside. That's another thing. That's another topic for a different day. But they were like, "Here, check this book out." I started learning more about just history, right? My history and about myself and about my psychological process and everything like that, which led me to learn, okay, I can actually learn. So then I picked up a book about, I think it was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I started reading that. And it was about money. It was about business. It was simple enough for me. So I started studying that. And then I started looking, okay, let me learn more about money because I'm gonna have to know about this when I come home one day. And then that's when I started looking at books on stocks. I started talking to individuals that were around that were prior business owners, that were investors or something like that was in there, and they started teaching me. So I just utilized books initially, and then the people that were around me, they turned into my books. And when I got out, I was taking notes. When I got out, I supplied every single thing that I learned, and it happened to work out, right? So that was the way that I was able to sort of shift my mindset into how to overcome the lack of education and financial literacy and the lack of education of just having life skills and take that and utilize it and make it a part of my being and then eventually teach others.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Well, I guess for free, my bad. Right now, YouTube would be the best right now because I didn't have YouTube in there. out here, you can use YouTube podcast.
Right. I love YouTube. It's awesome. Saja, did you want to add to that at all?
I was just going to say, we're talking about homelessness, and I think about the children that are in cars with their parents, right? Or couch surfing, right? And you're talking about K through 12 and financial literacy And I think you're never too young to learn. And I think that a child from the age of 0 to 4 can learn so much and retain it, and so don't be afraid to share with them those ideas. I'm a great grandmother, so that's why I'm telling you this, right? I'm speaking from knowing that how fast my 2-year-old great grandson picks up on things. He knows how to count money. He's 2. You know what I mean? So they're never too young to learn, right? And so I think that's very important. I loved what Devontae said about utilizing his time. You need to empower people and encourage them and know that they matter. That simple thing, humanizing people, can make or break them. It doesn't matter if they're homeless or not. But when you're homeless, you need all of that. So anyway, I just on that financial literacy, definitely I needed it. I was born in the 60s with I was born and raised not here in Washington, but in Eugene, Oregon, the 3rd Black family. I'm telling you, I done been through it, right? I couldn't even go to preschool because that was too many Black kids in a school at one time. And that would have been 3. My sister, who's a year older, my uncle, who's 6 months older than me, were both in school, so I couldn't go. So I want you to know that I come understanding how the system continues to oppress us and how that is a big, how that in itself plays into this homelessness factor with disproportionality and people who look like me, BIPOC, Indigenous. Matter of fact, people may not know this, but your largest population of homelessness are Pacific Islanders. And you know what? And that's not true. I'm surrounded by them right here where I live. And they told me that don't happen because family takes care of family. So there's a break somewhere in the system that plays out that keeps those people away from family enough, whatever they did, you know what I'm saying, end up where they're at. And I don't want to just make it about race, but it is that, right? It is that. We just got to go ahead and accept that. And I think if people would just open up their eyes and understand that it's not you can't stereotype race, like people, like Black folks, brown folks, they do this, they do. You can't do that. It's an injustice. That's called prejudice, prejudging someone, right? And we don't want to do that here in Seattle. I moved here because of the diversity. I can meet anyone from any part of the world in Seattle. And that's what I love about Seattle, the diverse culture. I didn't have to go to Africa. It came to me. See what I'm saying? And I love that. I didn't have to go to Hawaii or Congo, right? Or Somalia. I didn't have to go those places. They came to me. Or Samoa. You know what I'm saying? They came here. I didn't have to go to Mexico. It came here. And I wish we would embrace that, right? And understand that we as human beings need to help one another. And I know I got off the subject of finances, but it's very important, right?
All of that is very relevant.
Right. And to go to school, I did do home economics. But yeah, I wanted to also touch on the fact that technology, it's changed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You don't have, I had to learn how to write in cursive and sign my name. They don't do that no more.
They don't do that anymore.
No, you
at all.
digitally sign. You digitally sign, right? Kids don't know how to read no watch. Everything's what? Right? It's digital.
They're breaking up math now, this Common Core, I don't know what they call it. It's like different chunks. What is that? We do not do that. That's not, how is that a thing? I don't know, but we are, but I'm noticing too, like as a kid, we learned how to at very least balance a checkbook, right? I'm not seeing that anymore. I mean, can they learn to balance like a bank account with a debit card? Can we do that since nobody's really using checks anymore? I don't know, right? But it's not really happening. So I think that, yeah, I mean, as we progress in society, there are core things that do need to be taught in schools, that need to be taught to the youth. Mental health is something that also, needs to be touched on. They need to start talking about it more. Stop. If children have mental health issues or whatever you want to call it, that's okay. It's okay. And normalizing that we're all different and we all have different skills and different, ideas and ways that we learn, and that's okay. But making sure that we all are working collaboratively and getting that education and uplifting one another. Nature, I see that you have your hand up.
Okay, there it is. I was trying to unmute myself. So really, when I think about, this is like just been phenomenal to really have this dialogue. And, for the listeners or those who will be watching, the webinar, later on, is that this is a continued community conversation that is vital for us to continue to have. And, not just when things, need to be presented in a certain capacity, but, really so having like an ongoing dialogue is really important. And, we've talked about so much, but, really looking at financial education for children needs to be implemented in our schools. Listen, they frauded us long enough in trying to convince us that Christopher Columbus discovered America, right? And so why not incorporate the financial education for our children, is because it gives us an opportunity to teach our children about building generational wealth. And, and for our marginalized community, those who are greatly impacted by, being unstably housed, is that all you have to have is $2 and one food stamp. It's not like you have to. I come from the era of paper food stamps. How can we help our kids build generational wealth? And it's important that we support the ideology and the teachings that happens within our schools to teach them about personal finance, how to manage your lunch money. If you got 50 cents, can you get 2 carrots and a pickle? And I just use that as an example, but giving our children in our younger generation the financial education is one of the most important things that we can do now to really start to understand and to unpack and unravel some of the things around the myths around generational wealth, right? It's not about leaving somebody a silver spoon, but how can I incorporate some principles in my life to where I can buy my own silver spoon, right? And then to be able to have an open conversations and dialogues about money and what does that mean? Because if they're being exposed to, racism and poverty and the economic disadvantages, how come we can't talk about money? We're talking about racism. We're talking about discrimination. We're talking about health disparities, right? The children are witnessing the violence in the homes. So we have to talk about money. We have to talk about, no, we're not buying $200 shoes. Michael Jordan and Nike are already rich, right? Let's talk about you saving that $200 every time you get an urge to buy a pair of shoes. And let's count that money at the end of the year to see how much you have towards your riches. And I say that all the time. I don't want to give no name brand nothing, no more money, because they're already rich, right? They're already rich. Why I want to give them more money? Because they ain't giving me nothing. I tell I'm a grandmother. I tell my grandkids that all the time. If we can't buy it on clearance, we're going to come back when it's on sale, right? And we're going to make sure that whatever you want today, that you'll be able to get it provided to you tomorrow. because today don't have to be the end. And we have to have these really hard conversations, right? Why are you representing? Because this is also too a part of the promotional ignorance. We have to be able to undo that thought process and help to eliminate between, the conversations with media, social media. I call the different platforms Insty, Snappy, Tiki-Taki and all that stuff, because our kids are paying attention and they're watching, what other people are doing, but they don't know the steps and the strides that people have had to take to get what they have in order to maintain what we see is kind of like visible. We don't know. I tell people all the time, like, you might not be able to walk outside of this door frame with my shoes on because my shoes were made for me to walk in. But I get to create a pathway for you to walk alongside of me or behind me or in front of me, and then we can do it together. Those conversations have been so taken out of our schools and even in conversations within our homes, because everybody's like this, and we already know that the reality of what we're seeing, in social media is not the realities of how we're living and how we're doing, right? We're doing a whole lot of talking about, unstably housed, but what are we doing about it? Am I contributing dollars back into my community for a structure to be built for a family to be able to have a place to lay their head, right? I'll be quiet in a minute, I live in Tukwila. And when I moved to Tukwila, I was on Section 8, a single mother, trying to make ends meet, working a full-time, working poor. That same house that I rented off of Section 8, I own the home, right? I own it. But it took for someone that was mentoring me to support my ideas around, I can actually do this. And let me tell you what the owner said to me. He said, I didn't tell you that I was selling the house because I knew that you couldn't afford to buy it. And that kind of like, it kind of stung a little bit, right? And I was paying $800 a month on Section 8. I was working poor, so I still was able to be eligible for food stamps. Well, let me tell you, that was a little over 21 years ago, right? I bought that home at $140,000. It's valued about 600 something thousand, and I'm never moving, right? I don't care about a little house, big house, house on the hill, marble, down trees, cherry trees, or anything. I am not. I told you I grew up in the projects. Just down the street, I grew up in the projects. And for people like me, that wouldn't have never happened, but it happened is because I was plugged into a special group of people who took an invested interest in me, who aided me along the way, right? And it wasn't about robbing Peter to pay Paul. So this is what I am, the information that everybody I get a chance to talk to, save your money. If you got to stay at home with mama for the next 5 years, save your money, buy you a home, and because nobody ever said that to me. They said I will be on Section 8 for the rest of my life. I will collect food stamps and my only end would be SSI and a bus pass. And I said, that's not the type of life I want. I want to live beyond, superstar dreams and what we call ghetto rich. I didn't want that life, right? Because I'd seen that it didn't work for other people for longevity. And so what I have is, others are able to capture as well. But again, we got to get people in position and we got to have those hard conversations, because sometimes we feel it's like it's beyond reach, but it is reachable.
Nature, go ahead. I'm going to move on. Let's see. I saw Cindy, I saw your hand up.
Thank you. I was just going to say advocacy. And sometimes you have to advocate for yourself. I know that when I went to, I was dealing with domestic violence and not a lot of people are able to speak about that. And that's part of the reason why it's able to continue, right? Because you're in shame and you're like, I don't know how I got here. But when I was finally able to go and I had to, I went and I told the school, like, hey, we're in a shelter and I need my kids to still go to the school because I need something to stay consistent. And so there was the McKinney-Vento Act. And so that resource helped, right? Getting my kids to school, and I was able to keep a little bit of some kind of normal in their life. But also, like, sometimes you will find people who are going to champion for you and help you at the schools. Sometimes it's in the community. Sometimes it's yourself. Whatever that looks like, just, speaking your truth and finding people who are going to mentor you, or who are going to say, you know what, this isn't right, and I know these resources, or I know this person or this organization is supposed to provide these resources. Let me help you. Let me connect you with them. So just advocating for yourself and speaking your truth. Like we said, homelessness can happen to anybody. So there is no shame, right? Although society, right, there is a shame in that. But once you start advocating for yourself, or you start talking to others in the community that care and that are there to advocate, you're able to lift up yourself, and then eventually you're able to lift others up.
Absolutely. Devontae, I saw that you had your hand up as well.
Yeah, it's a quick, man. I just wanted to first say everything. First, the McKinney-Vento Act, so dope. That helped a lot of our youth in the schools, man. They helped them out. And you'll be surprised by, I got a list from the schools, advocacy, right? Because a lot of young people aren't going to tell you the stuff they're going through. They're either embarrassed or scared or don't know how to. And when we went to the one of the principals and asked to get a list of all the young people that are in their program, it was like 50, 60 young people. Some had nowhere to stay, some were staying in shelters, some were staying with grandma. It was crazy, but we was able to get them housed in. We were able to help get housed in separate programs, help them get different food, clothing, etc. It was wild. So I love that. And also, we were talking about the different influences and how to break through. One big influence is the music for our young people, right? And music is a big thing. And I ain't gonna act like I don't listen to some of it. You know what I mean? I listen to some of the music when I be working out or whatever. But it's huge the way that it impressed on these young people's mind. Like Ms. Zaza said, she was like that this stuff, it impresses on their mind when they're young, and they take it. They see the chains, they see the fat cars, they see the, you know what I mean? They see all this stuff. They see it come with the women, or it come with the dudes doing whatever, and it puts us at a disadvantage when working with them. So that's a huge barrier to overcome. And what we need, in my opinion, is we need more individuals like ourselves that are going and talking to these young people, just like Miss Nature has said, that are mentoring them. What I try to do now is every once in a while when I reward myself for something, I might get a little chain or I might have a little ring. But I don't already, when they talk to me about it, it'll be like, I got a Pro Se chain. That's the name of my business, right? And I was actually able to write it off because it was a whole different business thing. And when they ask me about it, I break down business to them. I break down entrepreneurship, investing. I tell them about running a business, the different aspects of it, bringing in income, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? But I like to introduce them to other individuals from different walks of life that have their homeowners, right? That have stocks, that have bonds, but they have to make it cool. It, like what I'm learning from this generation is it has to sound cool. And there's individuals out there doing that, like the Wall Street Trapper. He's doing it. There's Him 500. These are all individuals of color that come from low income and poverty that make rap songs about financial literacy, that make dope games about investments and stuff like that. But if we don't take that approach and we don't bring the people in front of them, and it doesn't seem like a cool thing to them, it's extremely harder to make it past those barriers. But we definitely need to put more people that are doing that kind of stuff in front of these young people and mentoring them and guiding them. So I really appreciate that being brought to the table, man, because they need that.
Absolutely. Did anybody else have their hand up wanting to speak to that, or?
Well, I might have forgotten the question, but I think the question.
I think you're paused there. I think we might have lost you for a second. It looks like we lost Dr. West Browning's connection. So I think for the sake of time, we're going to move forward to our last question. And what do you recommend people say, do, or consider when they pass by someone who is unhoused? And yeah, what do you say to somebody? What do you recommend?
Can I start with that? I recommend that you approach them as a human being. You look and you meet them right where they're at. Some people have mental issues, and you can tell, I mean, if you stop, just treat them like you treat yourself. When you see someone on the street, say hello, hi. Just say hi. And if you can't say hi, smile. You don't always have to give them something. That may make their day. You know what? I spoke to this young lady who was homeless, who she came up into the apartments I live in, and I said, "Hey, baby girl, how you doing?" And do you know that she broke down and started crying? And she said, "Do you know, my grandmother used to call me that, and she's no longer with me." She said, "You noticed me." You know what I'm saying? So you never know. I believe in God. So he does, he leads and guides me everywhere I go. And what I do is for him, right? And it's all about serving people and showing them love. So when you see someone on the street, love them. Love them. Say hi. How you doing? And then interact, have a conversation and be sincere about it. Spend a whole bunch of time, and you might find that you'll learn something that you didn't know you. Because we are all precious jewels. We are all flowers. We're all trees, different species, different, we're all of that. We're nature. We are beautifully and divinely, wonderfully and fearfully made. So when you see someone who is at a disadvantage, don't kick them. Reach down there and try to pull them up. That's what I'd suggest you do when you see someone. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I really would love to hear everybody's answer to this question. What do you recommend people say, do, or consider when they pass by someone who is unhoused? And also, what do you recommend to support them? I'll jump over to Cindy. Would you like to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was eloquently put, like, just acknowledging them, and they're humans, right? And but also just remembering that we don't know what factors brought them here, right? And we don't know why they're there. It's their walk of life, and their reason is unknown, but it can, I go back to, it can happen to anybody. And I think just there was a second part to your question, and I'm trying to think of what it was.
The other part.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I was saying the other part is, what do you want people to consider? And what do you recommend people say? Or how to support them?
I think there's different ways to support anything, like was said before, like a smile is great, a hello. There's other organizations too that do, they go out and they do what's called street outreach, and they go and they help the homeless. They do pop-up events of feeding or giving them clothing or just resources, right? And go throughout the city, finding out about those and supporting them, maybe whether volunteering your time. And if you feel like you don't got the time, then, hey, what are some items I can donate? And just remembering too, how, being homeless are in different ways, right? It can be out on the streets, but it's also couch surfing. So if you do have someone who comes to you, and if you are able to, hey, you can lay your head on my couch or on my spare bedroom, for X amount of time. Like, even sometimes that's helpful. And people know it's not permanent. You know, maybe I can only give you 1 or 2 days, but coming in from the warmth is helpful. Providing shower, even providing a little bit of food, if you can, right? But just considering that they're human and this could have been you, this could still be you. As we talked about before, the homelessness, homelessness happens because of different factors, right? And some of them are society and some of them are institutionalized factors. And others are events that lead up to this. So this really could happen to anybody, and just considering that.
Thank you so much. See, anybody who else hasn't answered this question yet?
I'll hop in there too. You know, what can you say or do? And when we look at, you know, and it's kind of been talked about already, right? And the first way that when we really think about the vital aspect of us being able to have action steps and what can we do, we have to, you know, think about what we want to be done for us if we were in the situation. And thank you for that, Queen. Like you said, like a warm greeting with the simplicity of small talk is what we've gotten away from. And really, when we talk about making, you know, really making a difference, like making a difference is aiding in humanity. That's just the bottom line. Like, what more do you think you can do, right? You know that you got extra food in your refrigerator that you're not going to eat because some of us have a different advantage. How many of us have old, we've been having the same leftovers all week and we ain't thought about no one. And that's what we've gotten away from aiding in humanity because it is our duty. We can complain about it. We can talk about it. We can put a theory on it, right? And, you know, we can, you know, continue to have skepticism, but if we don't take action steps to make a difference, and if it's just one person's life, because that one person can then reach another person. I always say, reach one, teach one. But the practical application in aiding in humanity is huge. It can make a world of a difference. And I'm sure everybody's heard about the man in the hole, right? You walk by, what can you do? But again, it's not just about giving someone a few bucks, but that warm greeting, small talk, small chatter, and you know, and a friendly hello makes a whole lot of difference. This is what my grandson said, because he goes to the store. He's 18 now. My oldest is 18 now. And he says, Grandma, why do you have to talk to everyone in the grocery store? And I said, I'm not talking to everyone. He says, yes, you've said hello to everyone. I think he was about 10 then, right? And I said, because a simple hello makes a difference in someone's life. We don't know where that person, even though they're in the grocery store, that hello can change the mindset, right? And the outcome of someone's day. You know, I'm a senior. I know I'm going to be a senior. Well, I'm already a senior. Let me just be transparent. I don't look like nobody's grandma. But, you know, when you're in the grocery store, I'm short, so I'm reaching for something. Someone sees me struggling, reaching for something, right? So I'm resilient, so I got to figure out a way to get to the top or whatever. But there's still the simple act of kindness that takes place in what we do and how we show up. And, you know, and right now, like, we need that. So again, humanity and kindness. And I'm going to keep talking to everybody in the grocery store too. So if you see me in the grocery store, I'm going to be like, hey, how you doing? Ain't seen you in a while. And they be looking like, do you know me? No, but I know you now.
You know what? I get accused of the same thing. I do that as well. So But I love what you said, and we're about to just close this out now. We're at time. But I love the last thing that you said. A simple hello can make a difference in someone's life. And that's huge. So thank you all so much for joining us. We've really enjoyed these answers and the engagement. And yes, thank you all so much for coming. Have a great night.
Are we supposed to stay on or are we logging off too?